Hey, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and I'm going to be bringing you guys a special video today. I'm going to be going over my draft recap for the Token Minorities March Madness 2019 tournament. This tournament is sponsored, like I said, by the Token Minorities, run by none other than Jolt. And I want to give a big special thanks to him and his team for putting together this tournament. He has all the folks over on the main TTM channel, so put people like Styx, Goldoa Dragon, Johnny GB, Uzi Gunner. I think he's still having folks like Matty Brolic and Aberforth as the part of the TTM family technically, but I don't know if they do many uploads for TTM. But I do want to give them a special thanks all the same. And I want to give a special thanks to all of the tournament staff that's going to be helping out with the tournament. There's like probably 30 or 40 moderators that are helping organize and supervise all the different draft pools and all of the different battling pools. If you're not familiar with March Madness, let me tell you a little bit about the format. So the way that it works is there's two divisions. There's the All-Star Division, and then there's the Open Division. We've played in the Open Division in the past. So basically, they have a submission list, like a submission form that people have to fill out to be added to the Open Division roster. In the past, it's been like as many as 64 competitors, and then you have to draft versus them and then play versus them. You play a few matches leading up to the day of the actual tournament, which usually ends up taking place all in one day. And this year, actually, the Open Division is at a whopping 320 participants, which is crazy. So I don't even know how many. I think that's like that's literally like 32 draft pools. So shout outs to the Token Minorities for figuring out a way to keep all of that organized and in smooth running fashion. So if you can make it to the final X number of people in the Open Division, you get to play on the day of the tournament. And then the All-Star Division is there by invitation, and then they luckily don't have to do all of the prelims in order to compete. They just are put straight into a pool that's going to compete on draft day. And then the people who advance out of All-Stars or advance out of the final open bracket pool or the Open Division pools will make it to like a March Madness, like a college basketball style bracket where it's single elimination, and you keep playing until there's only one team standing and they are deemed the champion. So we were fortunate enough to be added as an all-star for 2019's March Madness. We are going to be representing the UBL since we are their Season 2 champion. So big thanks to Automatic and Terra for considering me and electing to put me up as their rep. And there's a whole bunch of other A-list coaches in the All-Star Division this season. There's definitely, of course, plenty of A-list competitors in the Open Division as well. And it won't be surprising if one of the victors of this tournament comes from the Open Division. That's how it's happened the last few times. You know, kind of these up-and-comers will come into the Open Division and just totally dominate and end up winning the whole thing. So just because we're in the All-Star bracket doesn't really mean we're at any advantage or anything like that. Because even if you're in the Open Division, you can run into one of these lords who are just going to dominate the tournament. About the like the drafting and the teams themselves, you only draft 8 Pokemon, and I guess the main reason for that is that the bracket stage in particular is predicated on speed building, and they've modified the rules slightly as time has gone on, but how they used to do it, and maybe how they still do it, is they announce the bracket matchups, and you have like 15 minutes to build and start your battle. So you don't have a lot of time to get your team ready. And so with 8 Mons, I feel like that's a little bit easier than with 11 Mons. Both from the perspective of you choosing which Mons to bring, but also like you figuring out how to prepare for your opponent's threats. Like if they have 11 threats, it's kind of hard to prep. But if they only have 8, that makes it a little bit easier. So I think that's the main reason why the tournaments always go with 8 Mons instead of 11 Mons like a normal draft would. The way that the pools broke down for the All-Stars is that there's 40 All-Stars, and so we got into 4 pools of 10. And in our particular pool, we got paired up with a bunch of buddies, like Zamcrow, aka Scoot, Jacob as Always, Immortal Ments, Turkey, a bunch of people who we've tangled with in the past, so it was cool to be drafting again with some of those guys, like back in the day. We had the 4th overall, and going into this draft, I didn't really have a plan. There wasn't really anything that I was desperate to try. The only thing that I thought would be fun was to try and get either Mega Diancie or Mega Gardevoir, because I've not used either of those Pokemon in the past, and so I thought that it would be a good chance to take a shot at one of those. The thing is that neither of them are really a round 1 pick. And so after the first 3 picks went Koko, Kyurem Black, and Lando T, I thought Celesteela would be a nice Pokemon to try out. And I did make it my Z Captain. You have the ability to name any Pokemon on your team your Z Captain, and Celesteela is a natural pick because of its ability Beast Boost. So what you do is, if you're running like an offensive set with Autotomize, you get up your Autotomize. It's very hard to OHKO this mon, so you're almost always going to be able to get off an Autotomize versus, except for like super effective stab moves, like from electric type or fire type or something like that, you're gonna be able to get off an Autotomize for the most part. And then you throw off like a fire, like a Z boosted Air Slash, or you could do Flamethrower, or you could do Heavy Slam, or anything like that. And you get that temporary boost in power from the Z boost, and then once you get the KO, you can boost your attacking stat with Beast Boost. So you get an attack boost or a special attack boost, and Celesteela just becomes a sort of snowball from there. So offensively, it's really threatening, and it's very restrictive on team building, especially in 8-mon format. Celesteela, of course, is maybe even more infamous for some of its bulky sets, things like Subseed and things of that nature, because it's just so hard to kill. And the things that would like to switch in on Leech Seed, such as grass types, don't really deal well with Celesteela, because we do have, of course, super effective stab for dealing with them. And even like Heavy Slam is going to do a chunk of damage versus most grass types. So Celesteela I thought would be a really good Pokemon to build around just because of its versatility. Yeah, like I said, for the next slot, either Diancie or Gardevoir is what I was hoping for. I was hoping a little bit more for Diancie, just because Diancie has some slightly better setup options. And I already have it in my mind that I'm going to try and draft Memento in the draft, so that way I have the ability to give more setup opportunities to both Celesteela and Diancie. But that didn't end up working out. Diancie got sniped, and so I settled for Gardevoir instead, which is also really fantastic. Has some good setup options of its own with Calm Mind. And then the nice thing about Gardevoir, something that it does a little bit better than Diancie, is that it beats its own checks, right? So most of the time you're spamming Hyper Voice with this Pokemon. But Poison types that might like to switch in on this are going to get bopped by your Psychic moves. Steel types are going to get bopped by Focus Blast. Pokemon like Celesteela or Skarmory that can kind of deal with all 3 of those Pokemon, all 3 of those moves. You hit with Thunderbolt. Pokemon like Jirachi and Metagross that could switch in are going to be hit by Shadow Ball. So this thing just has like all the right coverage moves. It's so impossible to switch into. So that's really nice. And it's pretty fast, like for a wall breaker, and has this really ridiculous 165 special attack stat, which is great. The thing I'm more excited about with Gardevoir is its freaking awesome move pool, or support move pool, I should say, because it has Healing Wish, it's got Memento, it's got Destiny Bond, it's got Will-O-Wisp, it's got Wish, it's got Thunder Wave, so it's got Taunt, so it's just as good as a support Pokemon as it is as a wall breaker. So I think this is gonna be a very good versatile Pokemon for me. Even gets Trick Room, which is excellent. So in Gardevoir, really excited to use it. I think it's going to be a fantastic addition to the team. So at this point, like I said, there's only really one other Mon that I have in mind for the team that we'll get into in a little bit. At this point now, I'm just trying to think to myself, how can I deal with some of the most dangerous threats in 8-Mon format? So things that I consider to be the top tier threats are Pokemon like Lando T and Zygarde, like very scary ground types. Fighting types such as Lopunny, Gallade, Medicham, dealing with electric types, particularly Koko, but also something like Zeraora or Zapdos or Thundies. Mostly Koko. Koko is like a tier above, right? But everything else is also pretty scary, all the Thundies and whatever. Those are the biggest things to me. And then like Dragon type sweepers, of course, are also pretty spooky. So if we're dealing with the electric types, I thought there was no better Pokemon than Nidoqueen to get. Nidoqueen is just got the perfect typing for dealing with something like Tapu Koko with the Poison Ground. Prevents Volt Switch. It's able to resist or be immune to Double Stab. It's not weak to U-Turn or like really any other coverage move that Koko has, so that's really nice. This thing's got pretty good bulk, I would say its HP, defense, and special defense are all pretty good. Because of its ability Sheer Force, it still has the ability to hit hard without a bunch of investment. And then if you do invest into attack or special attack, you can hit pretty damn hard. Then it's got great support moves, rocks, toxic spikes. The idea of toxic spikes plus Celesteela just gets me so excited. Like, it's gonna be like able to break through so many mons and wear them down so quickly. So that's really exciting. Taunt, Power Punch, Sucker Punch, etc. So Nidoqueen I thought was just a great support Pokemon in general, and also a good Pokemon for dealing with electrics. Next, I saw that Serp was still on the board. Serp is one of my favorite Pokemon. I don't know why Swords Dance is here. That's dumb. Serp, being a pretty bulky grass type, is going to be a good response to something like Zygarde. Not so much to Lando, but the nice thing about Lando with my team is that Celesteela is one of the hardest counters to it, unless it's packing Gravity. So it pretty much means that I know what one of its moves is going to be right off the bat, besides obviously Earthquake. But yes, anyway, back to Serperior. It's it's a good round resist. It's a really scary setup Pokemon on its own, just because it doesn't need to waste a turn clicking like Swords Dance or Nasty Plot or anything. You can just go for the Contrary Leaf Storm, as I'm sure most of you guys know. The best thing about Serperior is that it has the ability to beat its own checks by bringing Subseed. So you could take Celesteela for example. It's not a perfect example, but Celesteela is a pretty good switch into Serperior 9 times out of 10. But if you have Subseed with Protect or Taunt or something like that, maybe with Synthesis, whatever is best based on the team matchup, Serperior can at least wear down Celesteela dramatically, if not outright beat it. So I think that's just so valuable in and of itself. But yeah, just the support move pool with Taunt, Defog, like I showed, it gets dual screens, it gets Glare, which is a really fantastic move that has very little distribution. It's just so good. And Serperior is going to end up being the fastest Pokemon on my team, which isn't amazing, but I can live with it. 113 is not bad. You throw a Choice Scarf on this thing, it's going to outspeed almost anything on most people's teams. And Scarf Leaf Storm is just scary, especially in 8-mon format where there's not as many switch-ins to your threats. I burped a little bit there. Anyway, and we're going to move on to the next set of 4. Now I have Incineroar on the team. So up to this point, Ice is looking extremely scary to my team, whether it's Weavile or Kyurem Black or whatever. And so Incineroar seems like a good option for switching in on Ice types and Fire types as well, right? Fire types obliterate my team up to this point. I don't have a switch into Fire types either. So I like Incineroar defensively because it's just got a good overall bulk, with all these good bulk stats. The ability to Intimidate makes it even more reliable for switching into things like Weavile or Scizor. And then you can throw an Assault Vest on it to make it bulky for things like Kyurem, which is really nice. And then it's just got a really diverse move pool. Setup options galore if you want. Taunt, this is my 4th Taunt user that I have on the team, so I have so much Taunt, which is wild. Knockoff for great utility. U-turn for pivoting. I love that I can use this, potentially lure in water types or fairy types or something like that, and then just go into Celesteela or Gardevoir or Serperior or something like that, and just totally take advantage of those switch-ins to Incineroar. So I think it's really nice. I was happy to add this to the team, and it's only 8 points, which is crazy. So it's a 90-point draft pool that you have to choose from, and most of the draft points, the number of points that each mon is worth is relatively normal. They just make it 90 instead of something like a 120, which is typical for 11 mons, because you only have the option to draft 8. But yeah, so I thought Incineroar at 8 was a really good value. Stinks that it's weak to rocks, but we can live with that. So then next I do have Asmodeus, my Cofagrigus, and so this is the Pokemon that I said I wanted to draft from the very beginning to pair it with Gardevoir and Celesteela, because it does have the option for Memento, which is going to give those things lots of opportunities to boost up, which is really nice. And Cofag obviously has lots of other fantastic support moves with Trick Room, Destiny Bond, Will-O-Wisp, etc. It's got good setup options with Nasty Plot, Calm Mind. The reason that Cofag in particular I thought was important to add is because usually on my teams I like to use a bulky Psychic to deal with those fighting type threats that I mentioned. But because I have Gardevoir, I don't really want to draft, like, I can't rely on that to switch into fighting types. But I don't want to draft another psychic type in 8-mon format if I can really help it. Just because, like, if you're doubling up on types in 8-mon format, you're definitely going to be missing a key resistance to something else. So I decided to go another direction with Kofag. Because I've never used Kofag before, and it just seems like a really good check to most fighting types, especially Lopunny, just because Lopunny isn't as powerful as something like Gallade or Medicham. So I can take one hit pretty easily and then throw off that Mummy so it can no longer hit me with any of its moves. If I'm like Colberberry, I can take one from Gallade. Medicham, I might be able to take one. Gallade doesn't Medicham doesn't really have great setup options. It does get work up. So you should be able to get off a Will-O-Wisp onto something like a Medicham after taking one of any hit, so that's pretty nice. Yeah, and then just Ghost to hit super effectively on Psychics is nice. Like, that's another reason I wanted Incineroar as well, because I hate bulky Psychic types having to deal with things like Cresselia, Reuniclus, Necrozma, Mew, etc. So Incineroar really helps versus those things, especially like Mew. Like, Mew frequently runs like Will-O-Wisp to help beat its checks, but Incineroar is of course immune to that. Mew does get plenty of other coverage to hit Incineroar, like Aura Sphere and Earth Power and whatever, if it wants to run like a Calm Mindset, but I digress. So these two in combination hopefully allow me to deal relatively well with most bulky Psychics that come around. So next I have Araquanid on the team. So Araquanid isn't a Pokemon that I thought I was going to draft up until the very last second. But once I looked at it and looked at my team, I thought it would be a really fantastic fit. Because it's a pretty slow Pokemon. It's a really good Pokemon to abuse Trick Room from Kofag. It does have Sticky Web, which I think was an addition. I don't know if it was all the way back in Sun and Moon or if it was only in Ultra Sun and Moon that it got Sticky Web. But the idea of Sticky Web plus Gardevoir is just so scary to me. So I thought that would be a good fit for that. It gives me another Ice/Water resist and Fire resist. I don't really have good water resist on the team at this point besides Superior, and I only really have Incineroar to switch in on Fire and Ice types. So Araquanid gives me a lot of good defensive utility. Yeah, I think it's just really pretty fun Pokemon to use. It also, does it get Taunt? For some reason I thought it got Taunt, but it doesn't look like it does. There's other cheeky sets. There's like Infestation sets that you can run on Araquanid, which are definitely pretty annoying. So yeah, I just thought it was a really nice addition, and this was only 8 points as well. So it was a good value pick. And yeah, I thought it really complemented the team. And then once I picked Araquanid up, like, even though I don't have a ton of hazards on the team, I do have 2 Toxic Spikes users and 1 Sticky Web user, which are like the most punishing hazards that you can get. And so there's still a decent chance that some opponents will run Defog versus me, and I don't have a fighting type up to this point. And I'd also want a fighting type, or just a Pokemon in general with more momentum, because I only have Incineroar's U-Turn as momentum on the team. So Primeape seemed like a really good Pokemon to add, because it does get the ability to Defiant. So if my opponent does want to Defog versus me, I have at least some way to abuse it. It's not as good of a Defiant user as like Thundy or Tornadus or Bisharp or anything like that, but it's fighting is fighting. Like, fighting is one of the most powerful offensive typings out there. If my opponent has their Psychic type weakened or their Fairy type weakened, they don't have a Ghost type on their team because it's 8-mon format and there's not a lot of good Ghosts that are worth drafting. Scarf Primeape with Defiant can definitely go in. Like, yeah, it doesn't switch in that easily because it doesn't have very good defenses, but like, it doesn't really matter that much. Like, if you are switching it in on a Defog, you're not going to be taking damage. So you can then just throw off really powerful close combats if your Choice Scarf boosted. You pretty much outspeed everything because 95 base speed on this thing is pretty good. And if I don't want to run it Scarf, I want to run Life Orb or something like that, this thing actually has really fantastic coverage. Fire Punch, Ice Punch, Gunk Shot, you name it. It's got something to hit everything. It's got Night Slash, which is not as good as Knockoff, but we'll take it. So yeah, Primeape for 4 points. Like, this was a good Pokemon to round out my draft, and I can use it as a pretty good pivot, offensive pivot, to bring in, if something like a Fairy type or a Psychic type wants to switch in on Primeape, I can easily abuse that. I can use my Incineroar to threaten that Psychic type, or I can use Celesteal to threaten the Fairy type, or whatever. So I think Primeape was a perfect way to finish off this team. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be the Baltimore Oriolus for March Madness 2019. So I don't know exactly when this upload is going up. It'll probably go up on the 14th or 15th of March. I can tell you for sure that the day of battles is March 16th. So it's going to be probably on the TTM Twitch channel. I don't know for sure if it's that or if it's like Danza's Twitch stream or whoever it is. I totally forgot about Danza at the beginning of the video. I do apologize for that. Danza is a good pal, and he and I have been in a bunch of leagues together, so sorry for forgetting about Danza. But I digress. This is a tournament that you guys should definitely be checking out. It's going to have like all the best players in the community in it. And it's going to be a total blast. And the stream, it has a really good team of commentators that are going to be providing great insight and hopefully some funny moments too. So recommend you check it out. Support your Baltimore Oriolus. If you're looking forward to seeing the Oriolus compete against some of the best on YouTube, make sure you drop a like on this video and leave a sub so you can stay up to date on all my latest and greatest gaming and Pokemon content. So until the next time, I'll see you guys later.